We all assume that Luffy will become the Pirate King. But what if Oda has been preparing us for someone else for over 25 years? And no, it's not Blackbeard. One Piece is a story about freedom, dreams, and inherited will. But more than that, it is a story about how legends are born. Not through truth, but through perception. Through rumors, misunderstandings, and the way the world chooses to remember history. Because in the world of One Piece, strength doesn't decide who becomes a legend. Narrative does. And if that's the case, then the question isn't who deserves to become Pirate King. The real question is this: who would the world believe became Pirate King even if they never should have? And once you look at the story through that lens, one name becomes impossible to ignore. Buggy the Clown. In a story overflowing with chosen ones, prophecies, and inherited destinies, Buggy stands completely alone. He is not a child of fate. He carries no ancient name, no divine promise, no hidden lineage that bends the world in his favor. He was not born special, trained by legends, or granted power by destiny. And yet, against all narrative logic, he keeps rising. While others are pushed forward by prophecy, Buggy is dragged forward by coincidence, luck, and sheer survival instinct. That is what makes him dangerous from a narrative perspective. Because One Piece has never been about who should succeed, but about who the world ends up believing in. Buggy's rise exposes an uncomfortable truth about this world. Fate does not always crown the worthy. Sometimes, it crowns the one who simply refuses to disappear. And the higher Buggy climbs without destiny on his side, the more the story quietly asks a terrifying question: what if the Pirate King doesn't need fate at all? When you place Buggy next to the other figures competing for the top of this era, the contrast becomes impossible to ignore. Luffy carries the will of Joy Boy, a destiny that the world itself seems to bend around. Blackbeard moves in the shadows of ancient legends, tied to a greater role that feels inevitable. Even Shanks is openly framed as a child of destiny, someone the world expects to shape history. Buggy, however, has none of that. No prophecy follows him. No ancient voice whispers his name. And yet, he stands among them as an emperor of the sea. That alone should not be possible. But that impossibility is exactly why Buggy works. In a world obsessed with fate, he is the anomaly that keeps slipping through the cracks. And if One Piece has taught us anything, it is that anomalies are often the ones that break the system. Which raises an unsettling thought: what if Buggy isn't failing the narrative, but fulfilling it in a way no chosen one ever could? Conquerors are not defined by strength, but by spirit. In One Piece, the most dominant figures are not the ones who simply overpower others, but the ones who never brawl, even when they should. And this is where Buggy becomes unsettling. Standing in front of the world's strongest swordsman and one of the most dangerous criminals alive, Buggy openly declares his dream, fully aware that they could crush him in an instant. That is not stupidity, that is willpower. True courage is not acting without fear, but acting while knowing exactly how powerless you are. Buggy has spent his entire life surviving situations he had no right to escape, and yet his dream never fully disappeared. If Conqueror's Haki is born from ambition that refuses to die, then Buggy already meets the requirement. The only thing separating him from the legends may not be power at all, but belief. And belief, in this world, has a habit of becoming reality. Power can force obedience, but only presence creates loyalty. Buggy does not rule through fear or overwhelming strength, yet some of the most dangerous criminals in the world willingly placed their lives in his hands. In Impel Down, hardened prisoners, men with nothing left to lose, chose to follow Buggy without ever seeing him prove himself in battle. That alone should be impossible. But Buggy understands something most pirates do not. People do not follow strength, they follow hope. He can speak to desperation, turn chaos into direction, and transform survival into belief. His words ignite ambition in people who had already given up on their futures. That is not luck, that is leadership. History remembers conquerors not by the blows they landed, but by the people who stood behind them. And the fact that Buggy can command devotion from monsters who could easily abandon him raises an unsettling possibility. Maybe Buggy isn't being carried by his crew. Maybe his crew is being carried by him. Buggy's greatest conflict was never the world, it was the shadow he lived under. From the moment he stepped onto Roger's ship, he was labeled the second son, while Shanks was treated as the future. Buggy watched as the Pirate King himself placed his faith elsewhere, not out of hatred, but quiet favoritism. And yet, Buggy never resented Shanks for it. He believed in him. He trusted that Shanks would one day claim the throne of this era and carry the will everyone saw in him. That belief only shattered when Shanks chose to wait, to step aside, to abandon the expectations placed on him. For Buggy, that choice wasn't humility, it was betrayal of a dream they all shared. And despite living his entire life as the one overlooked, the one underestimated, Buggy never let go of his own ambition. A man who endures that long in another's shadow and still dares to dream is not weak. He is forged. And that kind of resolve is something history never ignores. Titles only matter to those who understand their weight. For Luffy, becoming Pirate King has always been a means to an end, a symbol of freedom, not an obsession with legacy. But for Buggy, the title itself carries meaning. He sailed under the man who defined what the Pirate King truly was, and he witnessed firsthand the presence Roger carried across the seas. Buggy does not chase the crown for ego or adventure. He chases it because he understands what it represents. To him, Pirate King is not just the one who finds the treasure, but the one who embodies an era. That distinction matters, because when the dust settles and the world looks back, it will not remember who wanted the title the least. It will remember who gave the title purpose. And if the Pirate King is meant to be a legend, then Buggy may be the only one left who truly knows how that legend should feel. History does not preserve reality, it preserves stories. In the world of One Piece, perception outweighs truth, and legends are shaped by what people believe happened, not by what actually did. Buggy exists at the perfect intersection of chaos and misunderstanding, where accidents are mistaken for intention and survival is interpreted as dominance. Each time Buggy stumbles upward, the world rewrites his role in real time, transforming coincidence into conquest. That is how myths are born. The Pirate King is not merely the one who reaches the end of the Grand Line, but the one whose name echoes the loudest across the seas. And Buggy's name already does. Long before he ever deserved it, the world decided to see him as something greater. And once a legend reaches that point, it no longer needs truth to survive. It only needs belief. Buggy's ambition has never stopped at the seas. Even at Marineford, his desires reach beyond the title of Pirate King, touching something far more dangerous, the idea of ruling the world itself. Throughout history, only a handful of figures have ever dared to dream that big. Rox D. Zebek, Davy Jones, and now, Buggy. Whether through fate or misunderstanding, Buggy continues to mirror legends that the world was meant to forget. His image, his rise, even the way his story aligns with ancient figures invites a terrifying possibility that the world may one day mistake him for a successor to something far older and far darker. Being king of the world does not necessarily mean tyranny. It means being the figure history bends around, the one whose actions are credited with reshaping the era. And if Buggy were to stumble into the downfall of Emu, or find himself seated upon the empty throne, the world would not question how it happened. It would simply accept it. Because at that point, Buggy would no longer be a pirate. He would be history itself. Legends do not rise quietly, they explode across history. If Buggy continues on this path, his story will no longer be measured by feats, but by the scale of the myths surrounding him. The world would remember him as the man who commanded the greatest swordsman, bent former warlords to his will, and stood at the center of an era-defining storm. Every victory attributed to his name would grow larger with each retelling, until the truth no longer mattered. Newspapers would crown him before reality ever could. Bounties would fail to capture his worth. And long after the era of pirates ends, Buggy's name would remain a symbol of chaos favored by fate itself. In a world where rumors become scripture, Buggy would transcend the title of Pirate King and enter something far more dangerous, legend without limits. At that point, he would no longer compete with Roger or Luffy. He would stand beside them, untouchable, preserved by history as something larger than life. Of course, none of this is guaranteed. Buggy may never rise beyond the title of Emperor. The world could eventually see through the illusion, exposing him not as a legend, but as a survivor who relied on coincidence one time too many. History is cruel to those who stumble at the wrong moment, and Buggy's luck is not infinite. He could peak exactly where he stands now, remembered not as a king, but as a fraud who dared to dream too big. That uncertainty is what makes backing Buggy so dangerous. His path sits on a razor's edge between myth and collapse, and in One Piece, the line between those two outcomes is thinner than it has ever been.